She opened her eyes slowly. The white ceiling above her was blurry. Her head was pounding. She blinked once, twice, and then she saw him. A man sat beside her bed. His jaw was sharp. His eyes were dark, so dark they looked like they held secrets that could destroy empires. He was watching her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. She opened her cracked lips, and the words that came out changed everything. If you love dark romance, forbidden love, and stories that will have you screaming at your screen, you need to hear what happens next. Because this is just the beginning. 3 days earlier. Chicago. The South Side. The kind of neighborhood where you learn to mind your business, or you didn't live long enough to regret it. Ah walked down the dark street with her head held high. She was 26 years old. 5'9". Built like a woman who knew how to fight because she'd been fighting her whole life. She'd come to America from Kenya 4 years ago with $300 in her pocket and a fire in her chest that refused to die. Now she worked as a forensic accountant. Sounds boring, right? Wrong. Because Adhiambo didn't work for regular companies. She worked for the FBI. And tonight, she was carrying a flash drive in her coat pocket that contained enough evidence to bring down one of the most powerful crime families in Chicago. The Kang Organization. Run by a man known only as the Ghost. A man who had never been photographed. Never been caught. Never even been seen by law enforcement. His real name was Kang Do-hyun. And Adhiambo had just spent 6 months undercover, getting access to his accountant, copying every single dirty transaction his empire had ever made. She was 2 blocks away from the safe house. 2 blocks away from handing over this evidence and watching the FBI tear his world apart. But she never made it. Because a black SUV came out of nowhere. Tires screeched. Doors flew open. And before Adhiambo could even reach for the gun strapped to her thigh, something hard connected with the back of her skull. And the world went dark. Kang Do-hyun stood in the basement of his club, staring at the woman tied to the chair. His men had brought her in 20 minutes ago. She was unconscious. Blood matted in her thick, coiled hair. Her head hung forward, her breathing shallow. She was heading to the FBI safe house on Ashland, his second-in-command said. Park Jun-sik, a man built like a refrigerator with a face that had never learned how to smile. She had this on her. He held up the flash drive. Do-hyun took it slowly. He plugged it into the laptop on the table beside him, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Everything was on there. The offshore accounts. The shell companies. The weapons shipments. The names of every politician he'd ever paid off. 6 months of work. Someone had been inside his organization for 6 months, and he hadn't known. His hand curled into a fist so tight his knuckles cracked. Who is she? His voice was soft. That was when he was most dangerous, when he spoke softly. Jun-sik handed him a file. Do-hyun opened it. Adhiambo Aching. Born in Kisumu, Kenya. Immigrated legally on a student visa. Double major in finance and criminal justice from University of Chicago. Recruited by the FBI 3 years ago. There was a photo attached. He looked at it, then looked at the woman in the chair. Even unconscious, even with blood on her face, she was striking. High cheekbones. Full lips. Skin the color of rich mahogany. But it wasn't her beauty that caught his attention. It was her file. She had a 98% conviction rate. Every case she touched, someone went to prison. She was good. Maybe too good. What do you want us to do with her? Jun-sik asked. The question hung in the air. Do-hyun knew what he should do. This woman was a threat. A direct threat to everything he'd built over the past decade. His father had started this empire, but Do-hyun had turned it into something untouchable. And now this woman from Kenya, this FBI agent with fire in her blood, had nearly burned it all down. He should kill her. It would be easy. Quick. No one would ever find the body. But something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the way she'd walked down that street. He'd watched the surveillance footage. She hadn't looked scared. She hadn't looked nervous. She'd looked like a warrior going into battle. And Kang Do-hyun, respected warriors. Take her upstairs, he finally said. Put her in the guest suite. Get the doctor. Jun-sik's eyebrows shot up. Sir, you heard me. But she's FBI. I know what she is. Do-hyun's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Take her upstairs. Jun-sik knew better than to argue twice. He bowed his head and gestured to the other men. They untied Adhyambo carefully, more carefully than they'd ever handled anyone before, and carried her out of the basement. Do-hyun stayed behind. He stared at the flash drive in his hand. She'd almost destroyed him. Almost. But almost wasn't the same as success. And now, she belonged to him. 24 hours passed. The doctor came and went. He said she had a severe concussion. Possible brain swelling. She needed rest, time, and careful monitoring. Do-hyun found himself checking on her more than he should. He told himself it was strategy. He needed her alive, needed to know how much the FBI knew. Who else was involved? How deep the investigation went. But every time he sat beside her bed, watching her breathe, he felt something he couldn't explain. Something dangerous. On the second day, she started moving. Her fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. Do-hyun leaned forward in his chair. And then she opened her eyes. Those eyes. Dark brown. Almost black. Deep enough to drown in. She looked around the room slowly. Confused. Lost. Then her gaze landed on him. And she smiled. Not the smile of a woman who'd been kidnapped by her enemy. Not the smile of someone who was afraid. It was a soft smile. A relieved smile. Like she'd been waiting for him. Husband, she whispered. You're here. Do-hyun didn't move. He couldn't. Because in all his 32 years of life, in all the chaos and violence and darkness he'd witnessed, nothing had prepared him for this. What did you say? His voice came out hoarse. She reached for his hand weakly. Her fingers were warm against his skin. I was so worried, she murmured. I had the strangest dream. I dreamed you were a stranger. That I didn't know you. It was so scary. She laughed softly. But you're here now. My husband is here. Her eyes started to close again. Stay with me, okay? Don't leave. And then she was asleep again. Do-hyun sat frozen. His mind was racing. The doctor had warned him about this. Memory loss. Confusion. The brain does strange things when it's damaged. But this. She thought he was her husband. The FBI agent who had spent 6 months trying to destroy him now looked at him like he was the center of her entire world. He should tell her the truth. He should tell her exactly who he was and what he'd done. But her hand was still holding his. And something dark and possessive stirred in his chest. Something that whispered, what if you didn't? What if you let her believe it? What if, just for a little while, you kept her? The thought should have disgusted him. It didn't. Instead, it felt right. Kang Do-hyun was not a good man. He'd never pretended to be. He'd killed people. Ruined lives. Built an empire on blood and fear. And now, fate had dropped this woman into his lap. A woman who was supposed to be his enemy. But instead, she was calling him husband. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe it was a test. Or maybe it was exactly what he deserved. Either way, he wasn't going to correct her. He lifted her hand to his lips. I won't leave, he whispered against her knuckles. I promise. The next few days were strange. Adhyambo woke up properly on the third day. She was confused. Disoriented. She didn't know where she was or how she'd gotten there. But every time she saw Do-hyun, every time he walked into the room, her whole face lit up. There you are, she'd say. Like she'd been counting the seconds until he returned. Do-hyun played his role carefully. He told her she'd been in an accident. A car crash. She'd hit her head badly and lost some memories. The doctors say it's temporary, he lied smoothly. Everything will come back eventually. You just need to rest. She accepted this. Why wouldn't she? She trusted him. And that trust, it did something to Do-hyun. Something he didn't expect. He started caring. Not just about keeping her contained. Not just about what information she might have. He started caring about her. He noticed that she liked her tea with extra honey. He noticed that she hummed old Kenyan songs when she was tired. He noticed that she had a habit of rubbing her collarbone when she was thinking hard. He noticed everything. And it terrified him. Tell me about how we met, Ahyembo said one evening. They were sitting on the balcony of the penthouse. The Chicago skyline glittered in the distance. She was wrapped in a blanket he'd brought her because she'd mentioned once that she got cold easily. Do-hyun's jaw tightened. He'd known this question would come eventually. You really don't remember? He asked softly. She shook her head. Sadness flickered across her face. I try, but it's like grabbing smoke. The harder I reach, the faster it disappears. She looked at him with those deep brown eyes. Please. I want to know. I want to know our story. Do-hyun was silent for a long moment. Then, he started to lie. But the strange thing was, it didn't feel like lying. I first saw you at a charity gala, he said slowly. You were wearing a red dress. Standing by the bar. Looking at everyone like you were trying to figure out their secrets. Ahyembo laughed softly. That sounds like me. I walked up to you. Introduced myself. And you, he paused. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You told me I wasn't worth your time. I did not. You absolutely did. She covered her face with her hands. Oh God. But I didn't give up. His voice dropped lower. I couldn't. Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. Dangerous. The kind of woman who could destroy a man completely and make him thank her for it. Ahyembo lowered her hands. Her eyes were shining. So what did you do? I kept showing up. Everywhere you were, I was there. Eventually, you stopped running. And we got married? Do-hyun reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Yes, he whispered. And it was the best decision I ever made. That night, Ahyembo couldn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed, their bed, she thought, staring at the ceiling. Something felt off. Not wrong exactly, but off. Like wearing a dress that was almost the right size, but not quite. She sat up and looked around the room. It was beautiful. Expensive. Every piece of furniture probably cost more than most people made in a year. But nothing in this room felt hers. There were no books. Ahyembo loved books. She remembered that clearly. There were no photos. Wouldn't a married couple have photos? There was nothing personal at all. She pressed her hand against her chest. Her heart was beating faster now. Calm down, she told herself. You've been in an accident. Things are bound to feel strange. But another voice, quieter, darker, whispered something else. What if this isn't strange? What if this is wrong? She pushed the voice away. Her husband, Do-hyun, had been nothing but kind. Patient. Loving. Why would she doubt him? She lay back down and closed her eyes. But sleep didn't come easily. And when it finally did, she dreamed of running. Running through dark streets. Running from something or someone. Running for her life. The next morning, everything changed. Ahyembo was walking through the penthouse when she heard voices coming from Do-hyun's office. She knew she shouldn't eavesdrop. But something made her stop. Something made her listen. The FBI is getting restless. That was a voice she didn't recognize. Deep. Rough. They've started a full investigation into her disappearance. They're calling it a kidnapping. Let them call it whatever they want. That was Do-hyun. His voice was cold. Flat. Nothing like the warmth he showed her. Sir, with respect, how long do you plan to keep this up? Silence. Then, as long as necessary. But she's going to remember eventually. The doctor said her memories could come back at any time. And when they do, I'll handle it. Handle it how? She's a federal agent. She was building a case against you. When she remembers that. I said I'll handle it. The words hit Ahyembo like a truck. Federal agent. Building a case. Against him. Her legs went weak. She stumbled backward, and her elbow hit a vase on the hallway table. Crash. The sound echoed through the penthouse. And before Ahyembo could run, before she could even think, the office door flew open. And Kang Do-hyun was standing there, staring at her. His eyes were dark. Unreadable. But she saw it now. The danger. The predator. How had she ever looked at this man and felt safe? You heard, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Ahyembo's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Who are you? She whispered. He stepped toward her. She stepped back. Who are you? His jaw tightened. I'm exactly who I've always been. You're the one who forgot. I'm a federal agent. Yes. And I was investigating. You? Yes. Her hands were shaking. So everything you told me, about us meeting, about our marriage. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Adhiambo felt like she was going to be sick. You lied to me. Yes. I'm not your wife. A muscle in his jaw twitched. No. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do this? For the first time since she'd woken up in this place, Do-hyun looked almost vulnerable. Because when you looked at me like that, like I was someone worth loving, I couldn't make it stop. He took another step forward. Because you spent 6 months trying to destroy me. And then you woke up, and you chose me. Even if you didn't know what you were choosing. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because I've never wanted anything in my life the way I want you. And I'm not good enough to let you go. Adhiambo stared at him. This man. This monster. He had kidnapped her. Lied to her. Manipulated her broken mind into believing a fantasy. She should hate him. She should. But even now, even knowing what he was, some part of her still felt drawn to him. And that terrified her more than anything else. Let me go, she said. No. I'll scream. There's no one here who would help you. The FBI will find me. They haven't yet. She stepped backward until her back hit the wall. He kept advancing until he was right in front of her. So close she could feel the heat of his body. I know you hate me right now, he said softly. I know you think I'm a monster. And maybe I am. But I'm also the man who sat beside your bed for 3 days, praying you'd wake up. The man who memorized the way you take your tea. The man who would burn this entire city to the ground before letting anyone hurt you. His hand came up slowly and cupped her face. Your memories will come back. And when they do, you'll remember that I'm your enemy. You'll remember why you wanted to destroy me. But you'll also remember this. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You'll remember that when you had nothing, when you didn't even have yourself, I was there. I took care of you. I chose you. His eyes burned into hers. And then you'll have to decide what that means. Adhiambo didn't sleep that night. How could she? Everything she thought she knew was a lie. She wasn't a wife. She was a prisoner. And the man she'd been looking at with love in her eyes was the same man she'd spent 6 months trying to put behind bars. She sat on the edge of the bed, this bed that wasn't hers, in this life that wasn't hers, and tried to think. Fragments of memory were starting to surface now. Like shards of broken glass catching the light. She remembered. A badge. FBI. Her badge. She remembered. An office. A handler. A mission. She remembered. Being good at her job. Being the best. But she couldn't remember how she'd gotten here. She couldn't remember the night she was taken. And she couldn't remember why some part of her still wanted to go back to him. The door opened. Adhiambo tensed. But it wasn't Do-hyun. It was an older woman. Korean. Gray streaks in her black hair. A face that had seen decades of things it would never speak about. She carried a tray with tea and soup. You need to eat, the woman said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. Who are you? My name is Mrs. Shin. I've worked for the Kang family for 30 years. She set the tray on the bedside table. Adhiambo didn't touch it. Did you know? She asked. Did you know what he was doing to me? Mrs. Shin was quiet for a moment. Then, I've watched that boy since he was 8 years old. I've seen him do terrible things. Things that would make most people sick. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. She moved toward the door. Eat your soup. Whatever you decide to do next, you'll need your strength. The next few days were a war. Not between Adhiambo and Do-hyun. Between Adhiambo and herself. She tried to hate him. She really did. She avoided him. Refused to eat with him. Locked her bedroom door at night. But he didn't force anything. He didn't threaten her. Didn't touch her without permission. Didn't even raise his voice. He just waited. Like a predator who knew his prey would eventually come to him. And the worst part? The more time passed, the more her memories returned, the more confused she became. Because she was starting to remember. She remembered her training. Her cases. Her dedication to justice. She remembered believing, truly believing, that men like Kang Do-hyun were the enemy. But she also remembered something else. She remembered what it felt like when he looked at her. She remembered feeling seen. Not as an agent. Not as a weapon. Not as a tool. As a woman. And that was terrifying. On the 5th day, she confronted him. She found him in his office, standing by the window, staring at the city below like he owned it. Which, she supposed, he basically did. "I want to know everything," she said. He turned to face her. God, he was beautiful. Even now, even knowing what he was, she couldn't deny it. Sharp features. Eyes like black ice. A body that moved with the deadly grace of someone who knew exactly how dangerous he was. "Everything," he asked. "Don't play games with me. I want to know how I got here. What you've done. What you're planning to do." He studied her for a long moment. Then he walked to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a file. He set it in front of her. "This is everything the FBI knows about me. Or thought they knew." She opened it slowly. Her own handwriting stared back at her. Months of notes. Evidence. Analysis. She'd been thorough. "You were good," Do-hyun said. "The best they'd ever sent after me. You got closer than anyone ever had. So why am I still alive?" The question hung in the air. Do-hyun was silent. Then, "Because killing you would have been easy. And nothing about you has ever been easy." He walked closer. "Because when my men brought you in, I looked at your file and saw a woman who had clawed her way out of poverty in Kenya, who had fought for everything she had, who refused to break no matter what was thrown at her." His voice dropped lower. "Because you reminded me of myself." Hyunbo's heart was racing. "We're nothing alike. We're exactly alike. The only difference is which side of the law we chose." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She should have flinched. Should have pulled away. She didn't. "I know you think you have to hate me," he murmured. "I know you think I'm the villain in your story. But maybe we're both just survivors. Maybe we both just did what we had to do to stay alive." His thumb traced her jawline. "Maybe you're the only person in this world who could ever truly understand me." Hyunbo's walls were cracking. She could feel it. Every moment she spent with him, every conversation, every look. They were breaking her down. And the worst part was, she wasn't sure she wanted them to hold anymore. Because Do-hyun wasn't what she expected. Yes, he was a criminal. Yes, he was dangerous. But he was also human. She saw the way he treated Mrs. Shin, with respect, almost reverence. She saw the way he handled his men, firm but fair. She saw the weight he carried. The loneliness. The isolation. He'd built an empire, but he'd built it alone. And now, he was looking at her like she was the one thing that could finally make him whole. The breakthrough came on day 7. Hyunbo was in the library when it hit her. Not a memory, not exactly. A feeling. She was standing by the window, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. Images flooded her mind. Running. The flash drive. The street. The SUV. The pain. She gasped and grabbed the bookshelf for support. And then, she remembered everything. Every single moment of those 6 months. Every lie she'd told to get close to his organization. Every piece of evidence she'd gathered. And she remembered one more thing. She remembered the moment she'd first seen him. Not when she woke up. Before. At a charity gala. He'd been across the room. Talking to some politician. Laughing at something that wasn't funny. And she'd thought, "He's the most dangerous man I've ever seen." But she'd also thought, "He's the most beautiful man I've ever seen." She'd buried that thought immediately. Locked it away. Told herself it was nothing. But it hadn't been nothing. It had been the beginning of everything. Hyunbo found Do-hyun in his bedroom. He was standing by the window again. Always the windows. Like he was constantly watching for threats. "I remember," she said. He turned slowly. His face was unreadable. "Everything." "Yes." She walked toward him. "I remember the gala. I remember going undercover. I remember every single thing I did to bring you down." She stopped in front of him. "I remember being good at my job. Better than good. I was going to be the one who finally caught the ghost. The one who proved he was real." Her voice dropped. But I also remember something else. His eyes searched her face. I remember being attracted to you. From the very first moment. I remember hating myself for it. Telling myself it was just part of the job, that I was manipulating myself into the role. She reached up and touched his face. But that was a lie too. Wasn't it? Do-hyun caught her wrist gently. What are you saying? I'm saying. I remember everything. Including the fact that some part of me wanted this. Wanted you. Even when I shouldn't have. His grip tightened. You should hate me. I know. I kidnapped you. I manipulated you. I made you believe a lie. I know. So why? She stepped closer. Because maybe you were right. Maybe we are the same. Two people who've spent their whole lives fighting. Surviving. Never letting anyone in. Her other hand came up to rest on his chest. Maybe you're the only person who's ever seen the real me. Not the agent. Not the weapon. Just me. Do-hyun's control was breaking. She could see it. The carefully constructed walls around him were crumbling. If I let you go, he said roughly, you'll destroy me. Probably. And if I keep you, you'll destroy me anyway. She smiled a real smile, for the first time since her memories returned. Then I guess, we're both already destroyed. That night, something shifted between them. Not physical. Not yet. But real. Dangerous. They talked until the sun came up. She told him about Kenya. About her grandmother who had raised her. About the poverty that had shaped her. About the fire that had driven her to be better, always better. He told her about his father. About inheriting an empire he never asked for. About the blood on his hands that would never wash clean. About the loneliness that had eaten at him for so long he'd forgotten what connection felt like. They were enemies. They should have been destroying each other. Instead, they were recognizing themselves in each other's eyes. But paradise, if you could call it that, never lasts. On day 10, the FBI found her. Do-hyun got the call at 3 in the morning. They've traced her to the building, Jun-sik said. They're mobilizing a tactical team. We have 2 hours. Do-hyun didn't panic. He walked to Ah-hyembo's room and woke her gently. They found you, he said. Her eyes went wide. The FBI? Yes. They're coming. She sat up slowly. This was it. The moment of truth. What happens now? She asked. Do-hyun was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked her. He handed her a phone. Call them. Tell them where you are. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. She stared at the phone. You're letting me go? I'm giving you a choice. His voice was rough. I should have given it to you from the beginning. But I was too selfish. Too desperate. He stepped back. You can call them. Turn me in. End this. His jaw tightened. Or. He held her gaze. You can come with me. Disappear. Start over somewhere else, somewhere no one will ever find us. That's insane. I know. I'd be throwing away everything. My career. My life. Everything I worked for. I know. You're asking me to give up everything. He moved closer. Cupped her face in his hands. I'm asking you to choose. For the first time. I'm giving you the power. Whatever you decide. I'll accept it. His forehead pressed against hers. But know this, if you stay, I will spend every day of my life proving that you made the right choice. I will protect you. Fight for you. Burn for you. His voice cracked. I have never loved anything in my life. But I love you. I love you in a way that terrifies me. In a way that makes me want to be better, just so I can deserve you. Tears were streaming down Ah-hyembo's face. You can't just say things like that. I can. Because they're true. This is crazy. I know. She laughed, a broken, desperate sound. I'm an FBI agent. You're a crime lord. This can't work. Maybe not. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. But isn't it worth finding out? The next 60 seconds lasted a lifetime. Ah-hyembo held the phone in her hand. Everything she'd worked for was on one side. Everything she'd never expected to feel was on the other. She thought about Kenya. About her grandmother. About the little girl who'd sworn she would fight for justice, no matter the cost. She thought about the FBI. Her colleagues. The oath she'd taken. And then she thought about him. About the way he looked at her. About the way he'd held her hand when she didn't even know who she was. About the way he'd given her this choice, even though it might destroy him. She looked up at Do-hyun. His face was carved from stone. But his eyes were begging. She took a deep breath. And she made her choice. 2 months later. A beach in Southeast Asia. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A woman walked along the shore. Her feet bare. Her natural hair blowing in the breeze. Adhyembo Aching, though that name didn't exist anymore, smiled as she watched the waves. A pair of arms wrapped around her from behind. "You're thinking too hard," Do-hyun murmured against her ear. "I'm always thinking." "I know. It's infuriating." She laughed and turned in his arms. God, she loved his face. She'd thought, at first, that the feelings would fade. That once the danger was gone, the attraction would disappear. She'd been wrong. If anything, it had grown stronger. Because now she saw all of him. The good, the bad, the broken, the beautiful. And she'd chosen him anyway. "Any regrets?" he asked. She pretended to think about it. "The FBI is probably still looking for me. My career is over. I'm technically an international fugitive. And I'm in love with a man who used to be my target." She smiled. "No. No regrets." His eyes softened. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But I'm going to keep you anyway." "I'd expect nothing less." He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. Not possessive. Not demanding. Just tender. "I love you," he whispered. "I know." She pulled back and looked at him. "I love you too." Against all logic. Against everything I thought I knew about myself. She reached up and touched his face. "You made me question everything. And somehow, that led me exactly where I was supposed to be." Was it a happy ending? Maybe. Or maybe it was just a new beginning. Adhyembo had lost her memory and found something she never knew she was looking for. Do-hyun had lied to keep her and ended up falling so hard he'd given her the power to destroy him. They shouldn't work. By all logic, they should have been enemies forever. But love doesn't follow logic. And sometimes, the most forbidden path leads exactly where you need to go. And that is the end of our story. Or at least, this chapter of it. If this story grabbed you, if you felt something, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't already, check out the other stories on this channel. Because trust me, there are more. More drama. More romance. More moments that will make you gasp. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here.